Well, we are very happy to welcome you back, and that is because March 20th marks the United Nations International Day of Happiness. And Finland once again tops the UN's World Happiness Report ranking. The annual survey measures social support, income, health, freedom, generosity, and the absence of corruption. Finland tops the list for a seventh year in a row, closely followed by Denmark and Iceland. War-torn Afghanistan and Lebanon remain the two unhappiest countries in the survey. So what makes people happy? Well, according to the UN, happiness involves more than just someone's emotional well-being. For most people across the globe, it also includes economic stability. So this had us wondering, what role does income play in overall happiness? Isabella Diaz has more.
It's a question many of us have likely asked ourselves at one point or another. Can money buy happiness? Economists have put the question to the test before. In fact, the go-to study on income and happiness was published in 2010 by two Nobel Prize winners. Their research found a higher income could improve emotional well-being, but only to a point. The threshold being $75,000. That's equivalent to more than $107,400 worth of buying power today. But a new analysis published last spring and co-authored by one of those same economists suggests what many of us may have already guessed, but have been hard-pressed to prove. For most people, happiness goes up alongside your income. As for a threshold, the sky's the limit. In fact, the more content you already are to begin with, the more happy you're likely to feel once your paycheck goes up. But even here, there's an exception. If a person is well off and unhappy to begin with, no amount of extra money can make them happy. Still, some researchers say it's not that clear-cut. And it's not that money can in fact buy happiness, but rather it's the idea that money helps resolve or prevent everyday problems. Then again, it all might just be as simple as who you ask. According to the financial services firm Empower, 6 out of 10 Americans believe money can buy happiness, and even more millennials and Gen Zers live by that credo. As for the price tag on that happiness, the average American says a whopping $1.2 million would do the trick. Isabella Diaz, CGTN.
1.2 million would do the trick for me for sure, but joining us to take a closer look at the economics of happiness is Steve Siebold, the president of the International Personal Development Association. Steve, thanks so much for joining us. And
thanks for having me.
Obviously, this is something that you know a lot about. You talk about it regularly. I just want to know from your own perspective, personal perspective, I'm curious, how do you personally define happiness?
Well, I think in moderation, as all the great philosophers have espoused over millennia, that it's moderation, and money is certainly one of those things. It's one of the things that eliminates worry and problems and can solve certain issues in our lives. So I think that's part of it. But obviously, we all know that love and family and relationships, and there's much more to happiness than money.
So as you mentioned, money is clearly a big part of this. And as we saw in that report, there was a study that came out a while ago that set the threshold at $75,000. And beyond earning that, it found happiness peaks when it comes to financial happiness. Since then, there's been other studies setting the bar much higher, closer to $500,000. But what is the impact of financial stability versus profound wealth on happiness? Is it true that money buys happiness?
I don't think so. But to your point, and I've been involved with happiness studies and with money as a correlate for over 25 years in different universities around the world. And you're absolutely right. To some degree, you do need money. Whether it's $1.2 million, probably not. I think a lot of people make guesses because they've never had that kind of money, and they don't realize it's not going to make them any happier than they are right now. But they think it will because they see it on television, they read it in newspapers and online and social media. They see all these rich people doing all these wonderful things, and they think, well, that'll make me happy. And I've been dealing with rich people for 40 years around the world, and I'm sad to say that that will not do it for most people.
Well, countries like Finland, Denmark, Scandinavia, they routinely rank quite high on the happiness index every year. Yet some of these countries pay a lot more in taxes, but there is less of a disparity between those at the top and those at the bottom financially. How important is that notion of equitable distribution of wealth?
I think it's very important. I think that they've figured it out, like you mentioned, Denmark, Finland, Costa Rica is another place where the happiness quotient is so high. I think they've figured out that it's not just getting on and off the hedonistic treadmill that we love in the United States. It's all more, 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 more. And then you realize at some point that a car is still a car, no matter how fast it goes or shiny it is. And a big house is kind of like a little house, except it's bigger. And you realize it doesn't really make you any happier. So I think that equitable distribution is important, but just looking at other things besides material things and money to create happiness for you is a part of the brilliance of a lot of different countries.
Well, let's talk about the U.S. because it did slip in the overall global ranking this year, dropping to the 24th spot, down from 15th. Yet when looking at those people aged 60 and above in the U.S., the country ranked higher. It came in 10th position. What do you think is the correlation between wealth and age? And are younger people then less happy?
Yeah, I think you grow up. I think you grow up and realize. I mean, when I was a lot younger, like a lot of people, I chased money and thought more was better, 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 and happier, happier, happier. And then you get to a certain age and you realize that it doesn't make you any happier. You have to have a certain amount, of course, for financial solvency. But when it reaches the point of financial obscenity where you're obscenely rich, I don't think there's anything there. There's a lot of depressed people who are very wealthy, and a lot of them are clients of mine. And people might be surprised about that, but it's true. So I think as you age, you realize there are a lot of other things that make you happy, more happy than money.
Rightly so. And, as you say, wealth is one metric to help measure happiness, but it's not the only one. So what other metrics should we judge happiness by?
Well, I think you could start with safety. I mean, look at what how you opened the show with Afghanistan, of course, is one of the lower places. And, I'm sure Ukraine is not too happy of a place right now. And all these war-torn countries where all these innocent people are, Gaza, of course, and these people are suffering. I mean, we should just be so thankful that, in the United States or anywhere you're not suffering, that you're not. I mean, that we could start with that and go up to the people that love you and care about your relationships and hobbies that you have and how you spend your daily life and that you're healthy and just these basic tenets of life. I think we have to revisit and stop focusing so much on the money.
I'm curious, what do you hear from younger people in their prime earning years about how they define happiness? Is the younger generation more materialistic, do you think? And does it make them happier or unhappier overall? I have, kids in their 20s, and it seems that they're so focused on the material aspect of things.
I understand what you're saying, and my experience has been the opposite. Although I've heard your side of it as well. I think the younger people, they're better educated than us, of course, because they can, all they have to do is pick up the phone and get an answer to any question they want in the world. And of course, our generation, the Boomer generation, didn't have that, and so they're more educated. I think they're more mature in some ways, and I think a lot of them are seeing that all this wealth that we create in these wealthy first world countries doesn't really make us any happier. When 40% of a population is on antidepressants and it's a rich country like the U.S., something has gone awry. And so I think that hopefully they're seeing where we've made errors in judgment.
I hope so, learning from our mistakes. Well, we are out of time, but we are very happy that you joined us. Steve Siebold, thank you so much.
Thank you.